Netflix has added another big podcast to its roster. YouTube enhances AI disclosures. Roku revamps its home screen. Xfinity offers YouTube TV and more. Listen on.
Welcome to this week's edition of Inside the Stream. This is Will Richmond from Video News, and Colin Dixon from N-Screen Media is with me. Colin, how is all in California?
Well, it's great, Will. We had a little bit of rain this morning, which was a bit of a surprise, but I'm adjusting to life without the Premier League. The league finished its final season, and as an Arsenal fan, I was pretty pleased to see Arsenal win the Premier League, so I'm quite happy this season. And actually, while I was over in the UK, I managed to catch a game, actually, at the Emirates Stadium. So, I'm adjusting to life without the Premier League.
Well, there is the NBA and the Knicks, but I know that doesn't have appeal for you.
No, of much more interest will be the World Cup, which starts next month. But boy, is there a bunch of controversy about that. But we're not going to talk about that today. We are going to be doing a rapid round the hall. We have 4 or 5 stories that we want to touch on in our discussion. And you're going to get us started with Netflix and another podcast, right?
Right. And we've talked about this theme before, Colin, that Netflix is pushing hard into the video podcast space. And another big deal announced this week with Jay Shetty, whose On Purpose podcast is extremely popular. Some of our listeners probably watch it. He is a top-ranked health and wellness podcaster and has had a deal for his On Purpose show with iHeartMedia and YouTube. He is now going to be moving over to Netflix and Spotify, which have a joint deal that apparently is going to be worth $100 million. We haven't seen any confirmation of that, but we have read that in a few places online. So pretty big deal for Netflix. Again, we've talked about this before. We both like that they're pushing into video podcasts, and this is live. They're doing a live, they've announced a previous live podcast. They're doing The Breakfast Club and a bunch of other video podcasts. So relatively low cost content brings them more into the influencer world. These are all good things for Netflix, and certainly Spotify is a big player in podcasts also. So that's seems like a good move for them. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it does. It does seem like a good move for Jay Shetty, Will. I mean, from monk to multi-millionaire, that's a pretty big leap. The thing that's most interesting to me about this, Will, is that new episodes of his podcast will no longer be appearing on YouTube. That, I don't think, has happened with the other deals. I think there is at least a period of exclusivity for most of the other podcasts, but most of them are going to continue to produce podcasts that appear on YouTube and other platforms. So this is a kind of a first, and it's a big deal. Hopefully he's talked to his listeners, the people that touch base, use his podcast to verify that they're okay with their not being on YouTube, because it's a big leap, right? They're going to have to use Spotify, or they're going to have to use Netflix. And while both platforms have really good coverage, it's not as universal as YouTube. So this is a big change. So a little bit of risk involved here, I think, despite the $100 million price tag.
Right. Well, you can absorb a lot of risk for $100 million, though, right, Colin?
I suppose you can, yes.
Well, we're, of note for sure. Let's, as you said at the beginning, we're kind of doing a rapid fire around the horn here today. So let's quickly move on to the next one, which you've got about YouTube.
I do, yes. And one of the things that I think a lot of people have expressed a little bit of concern about, Will, with videos on YouTube is knowing when they're produced or where AI is used a lot in the video. And it was kind of difficult to figure out. YouTube was tagging those videos before, but it's always sort of buried in the description. Well, they're changing the way that they're going to tag this. And tagging takes place in two ways. One is that YouTube is actually asking creators to tag things that are made with AI, that they are using AI. But they're also now going to use technology to detect if something has been substantially produced with AI and includes substantial AI elements in it, and automatically tag them. And the way they're going to tag them is going to be more visible. So for longer form videos, it's going to be in the first line. There's going to be an AI tag icon right there, first on the left, right below the video as it plays. And for shorts, it's actually that little AI tag is going to appear on the short in the same place in the bottom left of the video. So people will be able to see very clearly now when things are made substantially with AI, which I think is probably a good response to people's rightful concerns.
I agree with you, Colin. I mean, I can say personally, I'm guessing this is true for you also, that I'm stumbling across videos all the time now that either seem completely AI generated or at least partially AI generated, looking at some of the pieces of video or the imagery. So this kind of disclosure, I think, is important and hopefully helps to set the bar in some way in the video space for creators and also for setting users' expectations. I think we wanted to note that this tagging process, if we understood it correctly, is only on mobile and desktop, but not yet on TV. And I think we know YouTube is now, I don't know, about 40% or 50% of their views are now on CTV. So still an open piece there, right?
That's right. I think the shorts, if you're watching a short on a TV, you'll still see the
right.
AI tag there on
right.
the bottom left. But if it's not, I mean, how many times do you actually, you can't, it's actually quite difficult to see that description at the bottom, and you don't use it, you don't typically see it when you just start playing the video, or the video starts playing automatically. So as you say, I think this is a bit of a problem, and that they need to think more deeply about how they do this for people watching on TV, which is a lot. And I certainly want to see it there. Well, I know there's been quite a few times now where I've stumbled into an AI generated video, and many of them I find really soulless, and I don't want to waste my time watching them. So I would like to see that much more prominently displayed on TV. So something for YouTube to take care of in the near future, hopefully.
Yep, I think fair point there. And let's just continue talking about YouTube a little bit more, although shift to talking about YouTube TV. We're reacting to an article that we both read in Cord Cutter's News this week, that Comcast has begun to sell YouTube TV, not YouTube, but YouTube TV, the vMVPD service, to its Xfinity broadband subscribers. And you and I looked at this a little closer. This is an interesting development. It's not clear exactly when this started, but the article we saw linked into the Xfinity FAQ section of Xfinity that explains how Xfinity broadband viewers can now add YouTube TV to their experience. And it seems like it's not a highly integrated billing experience right out of the chute. It looks like it might take the first billing cycle or so before the bills are integrated in Xfinity. But it does represent an interesting step, I think, by Comcast, especially given that they're a large cable TV operator, and that they've experienced a lot of cord cutting, to make YouTube TV available now to their broadband subscribers. I think it says a lot about how viewers want choice. And just because Comcast offers a video service, and it may even be, discounted as part of a bundle, that there are viewers out there who prefer YouTube or YouTube TV, or for that matter, some other plan. And so Comcast here is understanding those viewers' preferences and giving them that choice. That's a positive. The maybe not so positive of this is that if I were Comcast, I'd want to believe that my video service is competitive or better than what YouTube TV offers. So the idea that people who are already subscribing to Xfinity broadband and have a financial incentive to take the video service from Xfinity might switch over to YouTube TV, is sort of a illustration of the times that we live in. And also can't ignore the role of cord cutting here. We've seen millions of people drop out of the traditional pay TV ecosystem and switch over to the vMVPDs, led, of course, by YouTube TV. So again, another example here of the sort of shifting dynamics in the video space.
Yeah. And I think we both saw this in cord cutter news, and I think it was rather over sensationalized there. The way it was pitched there is, sort of Comcast starts selling YouTube TV to its internet customers after losing over 10 million TV subscribers. And that sort of sets the bit that you're thinking, well, is Comcast about to get out of the business of Xfinity? I don't think this deal is sort of presages that actually happening, Will. It's more of a sort of pragmatic, as you say, a pragmatic nod to the reality of the situation, which is that there are people who take broadband from Comcast who are not interested in Comcast as a TV provider and may already have YouTube TV. And as you say, it's not a very smooth, seamless integration. As our listeners will know, you can buy subscriptions to many different streaming services through other providers, like, of course, Amazon Channels and the Roku channel. And I think this is in some respects, it's a very similar deal to that sort of approach, right, where you're just reselling a service. The billing part is really kind of clumsy. You have to be on one of Comcast's boxes if you're an Xfinity broadband customer. They have two streaming boxes available. Apparently this doesn't work if you're on a different box. And basically you sign up for YouTube, you pay for the first month, and then after the first month the billing transitions to Comcast. Goodness knows how this works, how this actually happens, but that's how it happens. And then I guess Comcast takes a little bite out of that subscription for managing the billing for YouTube from there on out. I think it's much less important than cord cutting news was trying to suggest here. But just as you say, it's just really a nod to the reality of the situation. YouTube TV's the third most popular pay television solution in the country. And people want to use it on Comcast broadband. So it's just Comcast figuring out a way to get a little bite out of that usage, I suppose, and make it a little bit easier for customers to manage their billing.
Yeah, and worth noting also that you and I did not find any press release on this, and really no supporting other than the FAQ from Xfinity, no big
marketing
around, no marketing, no real promotion around this either. So who knows, that may be yet to come, but relatively muted launch of this service by both Xfinity and
now there are some smaller providers who've actually shut down their pay TV services in preference for YouTube TV. They're actually reselling it and then recommending it to their customers. This is a long, long, long way from Comcast doing that. So yeah.
I think that's fair. Well, let's move on to the next item, which is Roku's new home screen.
Yeah, so I have a Roku box, and as has been reported in the press, the new interface showed up on my box this week, so I've had a good chance to take a look at it. It was a lot less impactful on me than I was expecting it to be, Will. And I should say that I think I I wrote several pieces 2 or 3 years ago saying that Roku should make a change like this, should go to a more iconic format. And that's exactly what they have done. They now take 2 rows at the top of the home screen to provide recommendations to their customers, to people that are using the Roku box or a Roku TV, to show them recommendations for their viewing based on their viewing habits. So there is basically, I see 5 recommendations, 4 in a sort of square and 1 in a vertical block across both squares. And below that is quick access to all of your favorite services, just as Roku has always provided. And there's really no change to the menu on the left. But this sort of an iconic approach, more video approach with little screenshots of the different shows, is being actually carried throughout the interface, Will. So as you switch from screen to screen, you see this approach being reflected in more screens. So this, I think, is probably a good change for users and moves Roku very much more in line with what other competitors are doing, like Google TV and Apple TV and all of the rest. It also moves them more in line with what those people are doing, because Roku is reserving, it looks to me like about a quarter of the screen for a big ad on the right, which it can sell to advertisers. And this ad, it apparently has made more dynamic. I think they can play video there. They can animate what's going on there, which they couldn't do before, to make it more eye-catching. And this ad also persists through many of the screens on the Roku. So that's the big win for advertisers. That ad becomes a little larger and becomes more dynamic. As I say, I think this brings Roku more in line with other providers like Amazon Fire TV and Google TV and Vizio. Vizio is very much like this on their home screen as well. So good for advertisers probably, and hopefully good for users. My experience with it has been that it's pretty easy to use. And although I don't use my Roku as much as some of my other devices, the recommendations do seem somewhat, at least, to reflect my interests.
That's interesting, Colin. I don't think I've yet seen this show up on my Roku. I haven't watched yet this week, but I like the idea. The goals, anyway, is set out in the Roku blog post on this. I do think, excuse me, I do think they've identified the problem correctly. There's just so much content, and it's on so many different services that it's overwhelming, I think, in a lot of cases for users to figure out very quickly how to get to what they want to watch. And so Roku, with its 100 million users, it seems like they have a big role that they can play in navigation and also in monetization for advertisers. So this is apparently the first major overhaul of the home screen in 10 years.
Yeah.
And yet it seems like something that Roku can add a lot of value in for all sides of the equation.
I think so. And at least in their posting on their website about this change, they've been pretty careful to say that these things that are showing up there at the top of the screen in the top picks for you section are all generated by users' viewing habits, which is not true for many of the other platforms. Like, for example, Amazon Fire TV, they're selling ads in the carousels now that appear directly in the carousels. You can buy ads in that hero bar at the top as well. So I hope Roku resists the urge to sell space in the top picks to start recommending things that I'm really not interested in. I hope they resist that. I think that's generally a bad thing. But other than that, I think it's pretty good. I should mention, there is one thing I've noticed that Apple TV, as our listeners will know, I switched to using Apple TV to avoid all of those ads. There's one thing it does, which I think is really powerful, and that is, it seems like a very simple change. When I'm passing between icons for the different services that I use, it actually flexes the recommendations based on that service. So as I click on Netflix, The Last Kingdom pops up and Nobody Wants This, which are the last two shows I've been watching there, giving you direct access into the shows. And as I pass into other services that I have, it does the same thing. So I think that's very powerful. And maybe something should look at Apple, look at what Apple is doing, and maybe potentially steal some ideas there. But it's good to see the innovation, and I think it's high time that Roku did renovate that home screen.
All fair points, Colin. So moving on to our last piece today, you are going to, you have something on the FCC and vMVPD regulations.
I do, and so there's actually a couple of things going on at the FCC that I think are pretty significant. Old media continues to look to the FCC to help it survive the transition to streaming. And as you say, the first is vMVPDs. Apparently, they're looking to the FCC once again to reclassify vMVPDs. This apparently is something that broadcast groups like Tegna are looking for, because they have different negotiation rights, whether it's a virtual MVPD or a cable TV provider. Cable TV providers are covered by must-carry rules, and virtual MVPDs are not covered by those must-carry rules. So what tends to happen is station owners and station groups have less power in the negotiations with the virtual MVPDs. And they want the FCC to reclassify virtual MVPDs as cable companies. But this came up before and was rejected by the FCC. The FCC correctly at that time realized that they lacked authority to regulate virtual MVPDs. Their authority to regulate comes from the use of public airwaves or public media like a cable connection. A regulated connection through a cable company. This is through the internet. So, there is no really is no theory there to regulate. And the MPA has submitted a brief to the FCC to remind them of that fact so that the virtual MVPDs don't get reclassified. So that's one thing that the FCC is looking at. The other thing is they continue to look at NextGenTV and talking about must-carry rules. They're trying to figure out what must-carry looks like if everybody switches to NextGenTV, which is by no means a slam dunk. The FCC hasn't set a sunset date for ATSC 1.0, the previous broadcast standard, and doesn't seem likely to do that in any short time. This really leaves everything in the air as to whether NextGenTV will happen. But one other complexity here is, as I say, the must-carry rules. Under must-carry rules, cable companies have to take the local channels that are being broadcast in the customers' areas and put them on the cable system. That's what must-carry means. Last time this happened, this forced cable companies to go from the old analog world to the digital world, ATSC 1.0, and they had to buy a whole bunch of equipment to make that conversion so that they could continue to retransmit. Well, they'll have to do the same thing again for ATSC 3.0, or NextGenTV as it's called. But it's even more complicated here, Will, because NextGenTV is IP, broadcast IP, and there's a whole bunch of data involved here. There's a whole bunch of apps. So it is just not clear if the cable companies also have to support this additional data and the additional apps if this must-carry rule is enforced on them for NextGenTV channels. So another complexity for NextGenTV is out there, Will, and again, no clarity at all what will happen.
So no sense of timeline at all on this, Colin. Was there something new that triggered that occurred this week? Some piece of news or anything? Or
I don't know if there was a piece of news. I read this very good article on TV Tech website about this issue, and it was not something that I'd really given much thought to. Okay. And it just reinforces how difficult this change to NextGenTV is going to be for the entire ecosystem. And let's remember, this is in an environment where broadcast is becoming increasingly less important to the big broadcasters, people like Disney and Warner Brothers Discovery and Paramount Global. It's becoming much less important to them as their streaming platforms become much more important to them. So, it's really a very complex situation, and I really don't know how we move forward. Certainly the FCC seems reluctant to set a hard cutoff date for ATSC 1.0. We have TV manufacturers. Some of them are taking out the ATSC 3.0. LG, for example, made a decision to stop supporting ATSC 3.0, and I think Sony is taking out of it some of its higher end TVs. It really is a messy situation, Will, and I just don't know if we're ever going to see this migration complete.
Well, it certainly doesn't sound like it based on what you just said. So keep an eye on that one. And I think that was it for this week, Colin, unless there was anything else you wanted to cover.
There was not, Will. I think that's just about enough for this week.
All right, covered a lot of ground. Good chatting, Colin, as always. Thanks, everybody, for listening in this week, and we'll see you all again next week.
Inside the Stream is a production of In-Screen Media and Video News, all rights reserved.